Hi, I'm Lauren Spector, the young adult librarian from the Memorial Branch, and I'm here with my colleague, Kevin Awakuni, representing the Pio Pico Branch Library. Kevin and I have been working with Los Angeles area teens on a Teens Leading Change project about small space gardening and advocating for a community garden in the Koreatown neighborhood of Los Angeles. We are able to host today's program thanks to the generosity of the Library Foundation and their support of the Teens Leading Change initiative. Feel free to ask questions in the comment section during today's presentation. We'll have time at the end of the program to answer them.
We are excited to introduce today's program, a virtual Cottonwood Urban Farm tour with Elliott Kuhn. Elliott is the owner of Cottonwood Farm in Panorama City, which he started back in 2011. After the virtual tour today, please visit cufarm.org to learn more about the farm and all the events and awesome workshops they host. Elliott has been kind enough to work with us to help our teens learn how to grow their own food, even when they don't have a lot of space in which to grow. If you missed the LA Made program we hosted with Elliott about growing greens at home, you can watch it anytime on the LAPL YouTube channel. Now let's start the tour. Here's Elliott. Yay, Elliott!
Hey guys. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Laura. Really excited to show you guys around here today. And speaking of our old class, well, when we swing through the garden, I'll grab the tray that we actually seeded in that last class.
Okay, cool.
They're growing steadily. So a little bit about where we are. We're in the Northeast San Fernando Valley in Panorama City, and we're on 1.5 acres of resident agricultural land. So this whole area used to be farmland a long time ago, and believe it or not, we're called Cottonwood Urban Farm, and it's actually because of this. Maybe we can pan a little bit, this big tree that's behind me. So that tree's 100 years old, and it's a cottonwood tree, and it's a riparian tree. And riparian means it usually lives in or near a body of water. So no doubt there's water under this soil, but if we climbed our way up to the top of that thing and we look straight back, we'd be looking at Hansen Dam. And Hansen Dam, an amazing technological feat, but it stopped the Tujunga River from just flooding this neighborhood. But this entire neighborhood used to be just a floodplain, which made it really amazing soil to grow in. So we're going to walk through the garden. We're going to talk about some of the things that we do here and the various systems and how they work together and how we're trying to reimagine that agricultural past in our current context. So I've got my lovely wife, Vanessa, here helping me as my camera woman today. So we're going to try to make this work as best we can. And let's go. Let's go over to the lavender first, and we'll talk pollinators. So maybe it's better if you can get in a little close, but it might be a little hard to see here, but there's literally hundreds of bees all over this plant. And lavender is an amazing plant. It's a Mediterranean plant. We live in a Mediterranean climate, and it does really well here. And it's got an amazing fragrance, and the bees, they can absolutely smell it, but they use the pollen from this to create honey. And pollination's a really important part of what we do here. So on site, we actually keep 2 beehives, and that makes sure that we can grow a bunch of different crops and that we get the fruits from those crops. So any cool fruit you can think of, peach, mango, papaya, nectarine, apricot, any of these items, right? Tomatoes, melons, all of these things start as a flower, and it takes a bee visiting them to pollinate them. So if we walk into our orchard, behind me is an orchard where we have a bunch of different types of stone fruit. I'll show you some examples, the journey from flower to fruit. Tight here. So I think this is a pretty sweet example. These are apricot flowers. And this is actually the first year this tree's really blooming. It's pretty amazing. And so you see some of the bees buzzing around here. And if we go a little further in, here's a perfect example. There's a bee pollinating right there. Can you see that? Buzzing around, getting in on this flower. Oop, didn't like my finger in its face there. So it takes a pollinator to get in these flowers, mix the pollen to transform it to fruit. If we wind our way to the back, I'm going to grab a nectarine that's a little further along in its journey, and I can show you what that looks like.
Elliott, were you saying this is the first time they're pollinating?
So for my apricot, this is the first year that it's really setting flowers.
Yeah.
So all of these trees every year, we have to come in and prune. We prune old dead branches, but every tree has a different kind of pruning need. And apricots are a little specific, and I didn't read that chapter in the book. For many years, I was pruning off a lot of this fruiting wood because, believe it or not, this variety of apricot likes to fruit at the end of last year's growth. If we get into peaches and nectarines,
gotcha.
sometimes you can prune that off. And so I learned my lesson. So this is the first year this tree is in full swing.
Okay.
The rest of this orchard, though, all the trees here were planted about 7 years ago. So
Okay.
I've gotten really, really good harvests from them. So we'll move a little further back into the nectarine. I have a really early variety of nectarine, which we'll find the full story of pollination from flower to fruit.
Okay, cool.
So this is an Arctic Star nectarine, a white nectarine. It's delicious. Not to get too nerdy, but it's a low chill variety, means it does well here in Southern California. But so if we look back here, we can see its old flower, right? And so a bee came here, got some pollen, went over to this flower, mixed a little bit. And as that pollinated, the fruit swells from behind the flower. So here's one with the remnant of the flower still on it, pushing out. And this is a baby nectarine. So again, you can see that nectarine starting to swell through the old flower.
Gotcha.
That's the magic of pollination. All right. Bees are doing that. If the bees weren't here, it would be me all, 24 hours a day out here with a paintbrush, mixing pollen together, flower to flower. So it's an amazing amount of work that they do. And it's sometimes I realize with younger children that there's that little aha moment, like, oh, flowers lead to fruit, right? And so bees are this really, really important part of that process. And if we'll kind of sneak our way over here, and I think we'll have a good shot from the shady location, but we'll show you the 2 beehives that we keep here at the garden.
Okay.
And then briefly, just if we zoom down, all of these fruit trees are grafted, and I had an old tree that died on top. And so I'm really excited, but this is the first time I've done what we call as top working. And so this is the stump of an old nectarine tree. And we took 2 little scion or 4 cuttings from different trees, and we grafted them on. And now all the energy is pushing through, and these just broke through this week. So grafting is something really, really cool. I am by no means an expert, but it's a really, really amazing thing. And so, yeah, basically just cutting a little notch, and you line up where the nutrients flow, and it's pushing this stump is pushing all of its energy into this new nectarine tree that we're restarting.
Well, that's cool. We just had a question already.
Yeah.
Someone asked, if you had another nectarine, would you be able to tell the difference by the flower bud?
Yes. Like, let me grab a slight example, okay?
All right.
This is a Saucy King donut nectarine. Take this. This is that. And then... So between nectarines and peaches, not really. These are sometimes a little paler pink, but I wouldn't be able to be like, oh, that's a Saucy King variety. What I will show you is these are nectarine flowers.
Okay.
This is a plum flower.
Gotcha.
All right. And then back there, when we saw those apricot flowers, those are pretty distinct as well. And I can show you some almond flowers. So all of these are considered stone fruit because they put a seed inside, right? That big pit.
Right. Yeah.
So all of these could actually be grafted onto the same stump like I did here. And you could have a multi-graft tree growing peaches, nectarines, plums, pluots. But peaches and nectarines tend to look pretty similar. And then plums, apricots are pretty distinct as well.
Okay. And just real quick for my own information, how often do you water the tree?
So everything here, is on drip line.
Gotcha.
So I can show an example if we walk up this way. So this is drip line. There's little emitters in here.
Mm-hmm.
I actually ran these yesterday, and I hadn't watered for maybe about 2 weeks because we had some rain.
Mm.
But you can see how saturated it is. So I ran it for 2 hours.
Gotcha.
This is really deep watering that really allows the roots to chase it further down. So in general with trees, deep watering at larger intervals. Sprinklers are not great for trees because sprinklers are great for bushes that have surface feeding roots. But really for trees, they're surface feeding, but you want to create a deep, robust root system.
Oh, interesting. So if a person didn't have a drip line style, with a watering can and just like...
Yeah, so I could demo it maybe, but what we do is you build what we call a berm, like a big well around the tree, and we take 5-gallon buckets, and I just put my hand over it so I'm not dumping the water and blowing out the soil.
Mm-hmm.
But basically per tree 3 5-gallon buckets. And so when there's a well, you can fill up that well with the water and let it slowly percolate down.
I see. All right, cool.
Yeah, about for a tree of a larger size, I would say a minimum of like 15 gallons would be ideal in that manner. And
Whoa.
if you want to do it every 2 weeks, every week in the hot time, that'd be a great one.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Let's run over here and see if we can sneak in on these bees.
Going inside?
No, I think we can just go here. So, how's that visual? Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
So, behind us are the beehives. Both of these they're honeybees, all right? They're European honeybees introduced to the United States, right? But they're feral, meaning they were wild bees. So my buddy Byron Levy, Save My Bees, I would love to plug him. If you got bees living in your roof or in the wall or something like that, he'll come and take them out of the house for you. So both of these beehives were rescues. So they were living in a place that wasn't going to work out. It was either dangerous for someone, and they're not aggressive at all, but they're a wild hive, and this is part of the ecology here. So keeping them here is assures that we get that good pollination, and then it's bees forage on a 2-mile radius. So these bees are pollinating all over Panorama City.
Okay.
You know, people often ask me like, well, what kind of honey do you get? And I'm like, I don't know, drive around my neighborhood. You know, they're foraging all over this place. So it's a really kind of cool thing. It's not something I thought I would get into. I'm actually kind of allergic to bees, but we wear a suit, we use our smoker, and it's a really good teaching tool, I think. And honey's great too. I don't mind taking a little honey here and there during the season and to have that in the house. There's a lot of benefits to locally sourced honey. So those are our hives. We hope to get a few more this season, but anyways, let's go talk ducks.
Okay. I have a quick question. Someone was asking about the soil for the fruits or stone fruits. What kind of soil do the fruits or stone fruits trees like?
So in general, in gardening, this thing of the sandy loam, which is this perfect blend of sand, clay, silt, is ideal. You want something that can hold nutrients, right, but allows drainage. Hard clay soils are really hard on trees. We're lucky here. Like I mentioned in my little intro, we live in old riverbed, so it is that perfect sandy loam. You got to know what kind of soil you have, and then there's ways to adapt it. Sorry, we got our neighbors.
It's okay.
We're in the city, guys.
Sure.
In any event, adding compost as a top dressing can be really helpful. But if you're in really hard clay, there's stuff you can use gypsum, which will help break up the clay. If you're in sandy soil, more compost. But you want to you don't want to amend the soil in the ground so much that those roots from the tree don't have any incentive to go seek out nutrients further out. If you put too much amendment right there at the base where it starts out, you're not going to see its roots get into a real robust kind of spread and depth.
Okay.
You get a little bee drinking water here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they get thirsty.
Yeah, so we have this little water hyacinth so they can land there and drink. So water is super essential for bees' production of honey.
Yeah, I saw that at Joshua Tree once. They just had like a little bucket and all the bees were right there. And I asked the ranger and he said, yeah, they get thirsty. And so they can congregate in one spot and not
Yep.
be by the drinking fountains.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. That's cool.
Speaking of distinct flowers, this one I could identify if I saw it, but these are almond flowers. So really, they always have that blush of pink and big, like, fried egg white flower there. It's really cool. We're hopeful. The squirrels are real voracious on stealing these from me. So let's cruise this way and then we'll go into the garden, all right?
Mhm.
So behind me, we have our flock of ducks. So we've got about 25 ducks here. Right now, they're producing 8 dozen eggs a week. Egg production is connected to day length. So as the days get longer, they ramp up their production of eggs. And the eggs are great. I love duck eggs. And if you're into eggs, you'll love duck eggs. High protein, high omega-3 fatty acids, twice the amount of iron of a chicken egg. But why we really keep them is, if you notice in this area, I don't have any weeds. They're voracious about eating weeds and insects. And the byproduct is their poop. And their poop is really great fertilizer. So integrating ducks into the management of the orchard has been a really, really huge beneficial step for us. Any fallen fruit that hits the ground that's past ripe, the ducks are out there. In late spring, early summer, when all these are filled with fruit trees, when I open the door in the morning, they do not care about the grain on the ground. They book it to the orchard. So just a nice way to integrate animal husbandry, right, into food production. So we'll take you into the coop where we lock them up at night to keep them safe, but that's also where their nesting boxes are.
Okay. Another question about trees. This one is asking, as trees age, what is recommended to keep it happy?
So that's a broad question, and it depends on what type of tree. But let's say in general for the stone fruit here, the fruit trees, every year for me with the drip line, I expand the drip line further out. In general, where the tree's canopy is, right, you can follow that canopy down. We call that the drip line. Here we go again.
City farm life.
City farm life. And my squeaky duck. I expand the drip line out because where the drip line of the canopy is where the feeder roots of that tree are.
I see. So you expand it out.
Putting the fertilizer out there as well and watering in deeply, keeping things from encroaching on it. So sometimes you'll see a tree planted, but then a lawn is moved in and choked out all the area right up to the
crazy.
top.
Yeah, all the nutrients.
Right? So always clearing that back is really important so that the feeder roots aren't blocked by those voracious grass roots on top. So that would be good. If you also notice that most of my trees back there were painted white and we whitewashed them, I guess it was. So we get really hot here in the valley, and trees, especially deciduous trees that drop their leaves every year, can sunburn. So we take a white latex paint cut with water, 50%. We stir it around, it looks like milk, but we paint these trees. And it just decreases the surface temperature a little bit. Oh,
gotcha. Yeah. So it doesn't get as hot.
Yeah, it doesn't get as hot. So that's a good trick, and that can apply to a lot of different trees, and it goes a long way for helping them during the hot months.
Okay. I'm sorry, could you repeat what you painted with again?
Yeah, let me grab. I actually have my bucket.
Okay.
So in olden days, it would be a lime wash, but now you can get it's interior latex paint cut 50-50 with water. It doesn't have to be white. If you want to go to the return section, you find a beautiful pink that someone got for their nursery that didn't work out. Use that. Don't use dark colors, but something light to reflect it. But super simple. A gallon will last you a really long time. And it's a fun process. We always have like different team groups come out and help us, and painting the trees is kind of fun. You got to do it. I don't do it right now when it's flowering out and all that. We try to do it in the winter time before that. But even just getting the trunk on a an avocado tree or a citrus tree really helps out a lot. Cool.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a dump truck. Go ahead. Sorry, I was getting noisy on my end.
No problem. We're okay on time? Just want to make sure that we get into the garden.
You've done 20 minutes.
Okay, cool. So let's just take a quick rip, look at the duck eggs, and then we'll go into the garden. Give you a context of the size of this cottonwood tree.
Wow.
100 years, really amazing.
Oh, cool.
So it's a little dark in here, but if you can see from out there, this is where we have the ducks. These are their nesting boxes. You can see the eggs. Let me go grab them. Got a couple hungry dogs here. So, nice size, like a jumbo chicken egg. And they lay as many eggs per year as any chickens. They're really, really great. I'll crack it here and you can show you inside, but the yolks are absolutely huge. The white section, the albumin, really thick. Does a really great job for baking. It makes a really fluffy dough. But let's crack one open in the sunlight here. And you can see.
Cool. Whoa.
All right. So, really huge yolks, a lot of protein in there. All right. And so, I just, again, if you like duck eggs, you'll love them. I got a really hungry dog here. Ready? Go for it. Happy holidays. It assures a nice, healthy coat for dogs. Let's go in the garden.
Did the duck eggs taste different?
In my opinion, no. There's a little bit of a taste difference, you know. But these ducks are eating vegetables and grains.
Oh, I see.
It's not too gamey. It's a rich egg. A rich egg. So I'll spin around, and here we are in the garden. So we've been growing in these grounds here for 10 years now. And everything we do is in ground. So, you know, in our gardening class, we talked about you might be growing in containers. We're fortunate enough here to have the space. You know, we can grow, let's see, not those. So we can grow little baby carrots, right? It's pretty fun out here to be able to grow straight in the ground.
Cool.
And so anyways, we rotate crops here. We make compost on site, and that's what we use in these beds. And we're transitioning from wintertime into spring. So our winter garden was filled with carrots, beets, and lettuce, and we're going to finish those out. But as those go out, we're dropping in our cherry tomatoes. And these cages are actually, I make these are out of concrete reinforcement mesh. And it's, you can buy a big roll and make a bunch of cages. You know, I'm sure everyone's had the experience. You buy those rinky-dink little cages at the nursery, and your plant outgrows it in 2 weeks. So these are really nice. They can hold a lot of weight. So that's what we use here. Let me grab that tray that we seeded in the last class.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. And then, Elliot, I had a quick question. Someone was asking, how big is the property you live on?
Sorry, I ate that carrot. I don't know why I did that.
You know what? The fruits of your labor. Go ahead.
I don't know what I was thinking there. I just saw a carrot. I had to do it. We're on 1.5 acres.
Okay, thank you.
It's 2 parcels technically, and it's a antiquated designation called Resident Agricultural Zone, RA zoning.
Okay.
So this is that flat from that class.
Wow.
So
really
we've
good.
got
Oh
it
my God.
on the heat mats. And it's just a sea of greens, and you can totally go ahead and needed at this stage, a lot of nutrients. This is what we'd call microgreens.
Mhm.
We're going to let it keep going, and it'll get a little bit taller in true leaves, all right? So, and we basically do this system. I'll show you the garden. We do the same thing in the garden, okay?
Mm.
So if we can go down this lane here. These are really good too. Nasturtium flowers, a little spicy. We've been putting these in our salad mixes lately.
Oh.
But it has like a spicy, peppery. It's really good, really good.
How often do you snack while you're walking around?
What was that?
How often do you snack while walking around?
Well, okay, this is a conversation going on with my wife. She's like, "You don't eat any greens in the house." I'm like, "I eat them in the garden."
Oh, I don't want to start a fight between the cameraman and the host. So you know what? Eat what you want. It's your property.
Thank you. That's not Vanessa. Thank you. So if you see here, these lettuce beds grown the same way as that tray. So we seed them real heavy, and believe it or not, I've cut these beds just as I did now 4 times.
Oh my God.
So it's a cut and come again sort of method. Again, because we're in ground and it has the space, but it's a phenomenal way to grow a bunch of food in a really small way. Really tight, maximize space. You know, if we were trying to grow a head lettuce of each one, we'd have to do spacing. It would take longer.
Yeah.
So we do that with lettuce. We do that with Swiss chard, kale, a bunch of different stuff. So
yeah, the chard I noticed keeps replenishing that we have. Like I planted one a year ago, and it just keeps coming back, and it was off the same seeds.
You know, so here's one from last year at the front of the row. I can't say enough good things about this. You know, this is in the same family as beets.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if it's cold. It doesn't matter if it's hot. It doesn't matter if you cut it a bunch. It'll keep coming back.
Yeah.
If we're talking about getting people growing food, I mean, this is a really resilient plant.
The chard.
And, you know, and you can eat it a bunch of different ways. You can eat it raw, no doubt, but cooking it, all that stuff. It's a really phenomenal one.
Yeah. My wife likes to put it in a quesadilla.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I would say it's one of my favorite ones. The dogs love it too. Ready?
Okay. Wow. And then a quick question. Someone was asking kind of, what do you do with all of the food that you grow?
Hey, so we have a weekend market here called Market Zero.
Mm-hmm.
And we take stuff that we grow here, and we also work with a 30-acre farm, and we do a pre-packed produce bag that's available here at the farm every Saturday.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I'm growing at a scale beyond just the home.
Sure, yeah.
You know, like, and I'm really trying to use that space. We call this area the demonstration garden, and I want to show how you can grow a fair bit of food in a small space, but not everyone needs to grow, you know, a 30-foot row of lettuce. So yeah, we make sure all of our food is going into this market program that we started actually during the pandemic. So,
fantastic.
And a gratuitous puppy shot as she tramples the plants.
What? Oh, come on, dog.
All right. They shouldn't be in here. So in any event, I know just for the sake of time, we're going to pop out. We'll show you the back orchard, but I want to show you the composting. That's another important part. That's a part of our Saturdays. We're open to the public every Saturday, 9 to noon. And some people come, obviously, to buy produce, but others come to drop off compost. So let's
okay.
She's going to stay there eating a carrot. But
She's coming.
Trampling plants. I have to lock the gates, and the ducks, if I leave the gates open, they will find it, and they have mowed down a full bed of lettuce. So.
Oh.
Wow.
Oh.
These are all our California native plants. This is pitcher sage. You can see a bunch of the bees that are in here. One just flew in this purple flower. Look at this. Can you get that?
Oh, cool.
It's cool to keep natives all around the garden. All right. It brings native insects, beneficial insects. So we've lined everywhere around here with native plants as much as we can. So that's part of this idea of ecology, right?
Gotcha.
We think systems working together. If you need any rosemary, I have some.
Okay.
There was a flat at the nursery 5 years ago, and he's like, "Oh, this is really good." And I'm like, "A flat?" I'm like, "Okay." And I bought it, and I just threw it over here. Like it was like little tiny plants. Now it's like one of the spots I have to check is the ducks. We had a nest in there last year, and 10 ducklings walked out about the middle of June.
Oh. Wow. Elliott, real quick, someone's asking about the address to the Cottonwood Under Farm.
Yeah, it's
Urban.
8380 Ventura Canyon Avenue, Panorama City, 91402. And it's all on our website too, which is cufarm.org, O-R-G. There's the mighty Cottonwood right behind me there. You can see that from the street too. So, but 8380 Ventura Canyon Avenue, big long wooden gate, which we'll show you. So we got some pomegranate trees here. We have got fig trees over here, Pakistan mulberries, and we have a bunch more pluots, apricots, nectarines. And again, that starts coming into season for us in May, and we have different varieties ripening all the way through August. But I love fruit trees, so
yeah.
It's a really great seasonal tree. But behind me, as I'm walking down here, you might see these big hills, but these are all our composting mounds, basically. We process 2,000 pounds a week of food waste from residents dropping off food scraps from their home kitchens, and we mix it with wood chips. So we get mulch from a local tree trimmer. He normally has to pay to get rid of this stuff. And I guess I should have said that earlier, but we put mulch everywhere. It's a great way to keep nutrients in the soil. But in composting, we mix food scraps, wood chips, food scraps, wood chips. We water it in. And these piles, which my dog loves to find snacks in, these piles get up to 140 degrees inside. So if I crack into this a little bit, I think we should be able to see some steam.
Oh, crazy.
So maybe let me get in the center. Let's see if it's the contrast with the light. It's too bright right there.
Do you accept all food waste as well? Like I know sometimes people with like meat and bones and things of that nature.
Yeah, so because our piles, I don't know if you can see the steam coming out of that, but it's really, really hot.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like when you go through it and the steam comes out.
Yeah,
from the heat.
And so all this white stuff here, this is mycorrhizae fungal breaking down all this material. In general, your question is, we can be what they call full spectrum, meaning you could put meat and stuff in here because our piles are 40 feet long,
Gotcha.
8 feet wide, 5 feet tall. If you're doing home gardening and home composting, it's a little bit harder. Right. So the bigger the pile, the easier it is to throw more items into it. As a fun fact or a test, at one point our pile was massive, and there was a roadkill in front of the house, and I threw it in there just to see what would happen, and it was gone in a week.
Oh, really? It composted too?
Incinerated.
Wow.
So, anyways, sorry, maybe TMI there.
Well, too late now. So.
Too late now. It's out there.
Do you have to?
This is the food waste that we get to. So, people's residential food waste.
Okay.
The wood chips. And then I'll show you the final product is our worm bins. And so all this material takes the better part of a year to break down, but it finishes with worm casting.
Right. And are you aerating these? I mean,
we aerate it by turning it every week.
That's a lot.
Well, we don't flip the whole pile. So it's basically, it keeps getting thrown back, and that's the aeration.
I see.
As it goes to the end, then that pile gets thrown on that side.
Oh, man.
And this side is where they're digging it up. And here's our sifting station where they're sifting it. And we wind up with a finished material.
Yeah, looks great. How does it smell? Does it have that great composty smell?
Yeah, it's got that little...
Yeah.
That
earthy.
Like
Yeah.
and And we take this stuff. So this could be used in the garden around trees, but we actually take this and we feed it to the worms that are in those boxes.
Oh, okay.
So if I pull back, you zoom in right here.
Oh, yeah.
Red wigglers, phenomenal composters. So this makes some of the best finished compost material that we can use in our garden. And what's great is it's inoculated with the eggs, worm eggs. So when you put that in the garden, you're going to hatch some eggs in that garden too.
Oh, to make the pathways for roots and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
that's the full story on the compost. So it really,
Okay.
it starts with food scraps. We have a community drop off, maybe right behind us. You can see you can drop off anytime, 24/7.
Oh, cool. Wow, it's big.
Stopping by and dropping off their food. And,
Are there? Mhm.
Yeah, that's the big wood gate. So if you're coming to check us out, look for that big gate. We're next to the Trinity Baptist Church.
Okay. Are there worms that you shouldn't have in the compost, or are all worms
As
welcome?
far as I know, I think they're all fine. We use the red wigglers just because they're the most, I guess, voracious and efficient.
Okay.
But I think any worm is good. But red wigglers seem to be the industry standard.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of the whole tour. Those are all the systems and sights and sounds, from helicopters to ducks. And yeah, we're right here, right off of Roscoe and Ventura Canyon, or Roscoe and Woodman, in the heart of the valley. So it's an interesting place to be, having this kind of bucolic scene, but then have helicopters flying over the top too. So
yeah. Someone's asking, do you water? What do you water? What do you do with the water from the worms?
Yeah, so we can do collection and get what they call the leachate from it. So we have these kind of cement tubs, like the same one the ducks were swimming in. We'll slide them under, and we cut all the castings off the bottom. This thing has a big cutting bar. But if you take that leachate and you dilute it with water, or if you take some worm castings and soak it in water, it can make a very nice what we call a compost tea, or a worm tea.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you can spray that on plants. You can root drench plants, just pour it in a watering can.
Okay. And wasps are not as pollinators, right? That was what someone else was asking.
Yeah, wasps are absolutely pollinators.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a bunch of native wasps, little tiny wasps. There's actually cherimoya. You can grow it here, but we don't have the indigenous wasp to where that plant's from, and people actually have to hand pollinate those crops.
Oh,
So, yeah, wasps, butterflies, all of these are pollinators. Birds can be pollinators. So,
okay. And someone else is asking, do you sell the compost?
yeah, so we run a site for LA Compost, and actually their information right here, info at LA Compost, lacompost.org. They're a 501c3 nonprofit, and they're based here out of East LA, but you can buy it through them, and it's a tax deductible donation. So reach out to them, and it's absolutely for sale.
Okay.
Elliott, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm curious, since you have ducks and you obviously have dogs, do you ever think about getting any other animals, like goats or something, for your property?
Yeah, to all of that. I would love to have goats. I'd love to have a little pig if it was legal. I would love to have a horse, a donkey, but we've been thinking about chickens. I just started with ducks. My uncle always had ducks growing up. I love duck eggs, and they're a lot easier. But I love chicken eggs too. I love chicken meat. So we've been talking about maybe having chickens here, and goats would be cool too, even just for the experiential side. Getting into goat's milk and milking and all that, that's a pretty big commitment.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I'm ready for that journey yet.
For your goat milk?
Yeah, goat milk. I mean, goat milk is great, but if you're milking every day, there's no off button on the milk production. So.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about maintaining or caring for the ducks? Like, is that a lot of work?
I guess I would like to say that less than chickens, from what I understand, and I don't have experience raising chickens, but ducks don't need roosts. Ducks are sort of impervious to weather, so hot, cold, because they're so well insulated, very easy to keep them happy. Little watering tubs work great for them. You don't need to have a great big pond. And they're really great at eating all sorts of insects and food scraps, which I know chickens are as well. But, you know, a lot of chicken feed comes with antibiotics in it because they have to have this sort of special care. If you give antibiotics to a duck, you'll kill a duck. They're very strong birds. So in general, I find them to be a lot easier, from what I understand, than raising. Of all the poultry to raise, ducks are really, really easy.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's just, I guess, the commitment of letting them out in the morning, closing them up at night, fresh water, and the feed. You know, a wild game bird feed is pretty easy to come by.
Yeah. Do you ever grow watermelons or any of those kind of sprouting, or cucumbers, things that need trellises or support?
Yeah. So yeah, I'll do melons once all those carrots come out of that bed. I've got this. I'm gonna try this cantaloupe melon that I've been interested in trying to grow. So we're gonna throw that in there. I've done the sugar baby watermelons before, and we trellised them up the fence, and we made little hammocks out of my old T-shirts. And so if you go way back in my Instagram, you'll find a photo of that one. And then we're gonna try everything in this orchard out here. Once we get it weeded, we're gonna take big piles of the compost here, and we're gonna lay drip line over it. But we're gonna try a huge planting of butternut squash. And aside from loving butternut squash, I want to try to see if we can create a living ground cover that really can soak up the summer heat and keep the moisture cooled down.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
We're gonna try to carpet this entire thing with butternut squash this season and see what happens. So we'll be getting ready to plant that here probably at the end of April.
Okay. Another question here. With the pond and stuff, do you have mosquito issues?
No, I just dump that water about every 2 weeks. So that duck water, ducks are dirty, I'll tell you that much. They're filter feeders. They're always like, they drill and get dirt in their mouth, and then they go to the water and they filter it out. So, I mean, there'll be an inch of mud on the bottom of that kiddie pool. I tried doing a real pond and I gave up. So I've got a kiddie pool, and I've got cement mixing tubs. And what I do is I just dump them on my fruit trees regularly and refill with fresh water. So because of that, I don't have a mosquito issue. If I was just leaving these as stagnant water for a really long time, yeah, absolutely, there'd be a problem.
Right. Another question here from a viewer. Is it better for a beginner to get baby plants or to plant seeds?
I would say plants are always, go get plant starts and dive in, and then get a packet of seeds while you're there and try it out. Start off with some plants, feel the success of growing something. And there's amazing selection of plants at your various nurseries. And then seed wise, it's a little bit longer of a journey, but trying things that are easier to grow, like sugar snap peas or squash does really well, or lettuce, right? Lettuce in a tray can be really easy. The journey from like tomato seed to tomato plant can be difficult. It's a long one, and so there's a lot of steps there to make sure you have a successful plant. Should we move away from the street? Is that what you're telling me? She's like, it's too loud. It's too loud.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. It's awesome. It's not too loud.
But yeah, so plants I think are a great way to start and get your feet wet and get the success up, and then seeds are a good thing to follow up with.
How do you decide what you're going to plant? I mean, is it mostly based on like what you like and just want to try, or?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, like we always keep our little home garden, and that's usually just stuff that I want to eat. We did kohlrabi and red mustard and golden beets and stuff like that, chard. And then as far as like for the production thing, I'm in a small space. Again, we're working with a big farm, and then we're just growing supplemental in this CSA box that we do. So I was like, okay, well, I know cut greens, so cut chard, lettuce, like I showed you, those mixed lettuces, all those things do really well, and I'm familiar with how to seed them and the care for them and the production model there. And then, you know, every year if you start buying seeds, you're going to get a seed catalog, and then you're in there like, "Ooh, look at that new melon that just came out this year." You know? So I definitely had a few of those moments. I bought this, you know, cold weather melon that they're growing in New England, and I'm like, "Oh, that'd be interesting. I wonder if I could start it super early here," you know? So always kind of exploring and trying new things. Or if you go to your good nursery locally and you see, you know, wow, German green stripe heirloom tomato. I've never had that. You know, it's not something you see at the market. So I just kind of wind my way through. And then in general, knowing your seasons, right? So as I mentioned, we're doing all these leafy green root crops from winter on in through spring. And then that's going to really stop. And we transition to our tomatoes, melons, peppers, squash, right? And that takes us through summer. I don't personally do a fall time garden, but you absolutely could. So then you would seed those things at the end of summer for fall, and you'd be back into, you know, broccoli and stuff like that. So it's just kind of the undulations of the seasons, and then a mixture of, you know, because my consideration is growing for a small scale commercial thing, what'll work, you know, on our scale, and then also what we want to eat.
Yeah. What is one surprising fact that you've learned since you've kind of started your farm that you didn't think you kind of learned at like later on? Like, what's kind of one surprising thing about just having a farm that you didn't, you know, kind of surprised yourself?
I didn't know that DWP owned all the water under the ground.
Oh.
We dig our own well.
Oh.
I didn't realize, like, you know, growing food takes water. And growing a lot of food takes a lot of water. And no, I mean, that's kind of joking, but also, yeah, I mean, like, I really didn't know that. And so I was like, wow, like that was initially when I was trying to make my living just selling vegetables, and I watched my water bill go there and my profits go there, you know? And then I think, I mean, for me, you know, I'm showing you that whole thing about pollination, but I didn't know that 10 years ago. I didn't know that pollinators were flying into flowers and that's where our fruit came from. You know, I grew up here in the valley and I didn't have this rich connection to where my food came from. So that is something to me. I love passing that on because that was a pretty big aha to me. That like, wow, you know, this whole little story is unfolding in front of us. And that's where I love, there's nothing, if you ask me what my favorite thing to grow, like a peach or a nectarine off of the tree mid-May, phenomenal. And so to know that it started as a little flower in January is pretty wild.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't see any other questions here. Is there any, I guess, wrap up things you'd want to show us? We still have a few minutes left. If there's anything that you thought you wouldn't have time for.
Well, I'll show you these Pakistan mulberries just because it's a pretty wild tree.
Okay. I mean,
these will be ripe here in May, and it's just the month of May. And every morning for all of the month of May, I come out here and I have to hand pick these. But in the end, they'll be about as big as my index finger, dark purple, pure sugar sweet, no tartness at all. And it's phenomenal. And it's such a crazy tree, and it's so abundant and prolific. And it's a really, really fun one. If you're here in LA, it does great here. It needs minimal water, and it just produces an insane amount. I mean, it's a really great tree. So this is kind of like one of my little favorite seasonal ones.
right.
It's just the month of May though. It's like, that's it. You know, starts in May, ends in May, but it's an everyday kind of thing.
Oh, crazy.
My parting thing would just be like, I hope if anyone sees this, you know, come visit us on a Saturday, 9 to noon. But also just, I hope you guys get bit by the bug and grow some stuff. Buy a tree, buy a plant. And it's a great time in this crazy pandemic world that we're living in to be growing some food. And take care of ourselves.
Yeah. One last question came in. Do you ever sell the lavender honey?
No. You know, like I don't. You know, again, if we're talking about that evolution of my thought, like initially I'm like, okay, I'm going to sell this produce, right? You know, and I thought the bees too, but I'm not here to, we take a little honey for our household.
Gotcha.
And I really don't. I don't. But again, my friend Byron, Save My Bees and Byron's Bee Co. He has amazing local organic honey, and he's out here in Northridge, not too far away.
Okay. Well, I think, what do you think, Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't have any other questions, then I think we're good. I have to tell you though, Elliott, that pluots are my favorite. So I'm visiting you this spring.
All right, so June, July, that's all those trees behind me. I've got 4 different varieties of pluots. Flavor Grenade, Flavor Supreme, Dappled Dandy, and there's one other one in there. Howard's Miracle, which is actually a plum, but it's like a yellow pluot. It's one of my favorites too. So yeah, June through like the beginning of August, we will be flush with pluots. Come on out.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, Elliott, thank you so much for showing us around Cottonwood. We can't wait to visit in person sometime and see your ducks and your dogs, high five each other. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elliott. And thank you all for the audience for joining us today and for asking your questions. And don't forget to visit Elliott's website, the cuf.org, to find out more information about Cottonwood and about the produce. And also don't forget to check out the library's online calendar of events to find out more about our great programs at lapl.org.
Yeah.
So thank you all for tuning in,
Thank you so much.
and we'll see you all soon.
All right.
Thanks, Elliott.
Take care.